This is the fourth episode in our latest season featuring missing persons, unsolved homicides, and unresolved deaths across the United States, and the first in a two-part series. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are solely the interviewee's own. All individuals are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This series discusses crime scenes, violence, and homicide. Listener discretion is advised. This is the Fall Line. Phenix City, Alabama borders the state line, separated from Columbus, Georgia by the Chattahoochee River, extreme east and extreme west, respectively. The two cities are connected by commerce and by culture and by residents who travel back and forth to form a single metropolitan area. Columbus is a lot bigger than Phenix City. The Alabama town is home to a little less than 40,000, and Columbus proper's population sits at around 200,000. The lower cost of living can make Phenix City appealing to families who still want to enjoy the amenities of Columbus. A few miles drive over the Dillingham Street Bridge or the 13th Street Bridge isn't a big deal for a commuter used to Georgia highway traffic. And that's what 32-year-old Eric Nelams did every day when he headed out from his Phenix City home to his job at Kodak, over in Columbus. He'd bought the home in the Carpenter's Way subdivision for his family, his wife, his stepchildren, and for his older son who visited from Kentucky. And he liked being close to his family in Georgia. It was just a few minutes to Columbus to see his mother and his other relatives, and then just an hour and a half to Atlanta, where his sister Kathy and her children lived. Eric had a routine. He woke up early for work each day and drove the few miles in his prized Dodge Ram truck, which was fitted with specialty wheels. An Army veteran, Eric stuck to a schedule, and later, his loved ones would suspect that was used against him when plans were made to ambush him outside his own home. It was approximately 5:30 in the morning on September 26, 2003, when emergency services arrived at a home on Level Court in Phenix City. Eric's house was located in a cul-de-sac where, as Project Cold Case reported, police believed the suspects could see it from the street. The Opelika Auburn News noted that the first responders came in response to a 911 call placed by Eric's wife. According to later reporting, his wife and stepchildren were inside the home when he was shot, and when police arrived, Eric was found in the carport with fatal gunshot wounds and was pronounced dead at the scene. According to WTVM, Eric's mother, Annie, said that whoever killed her son knew exactly when he'd be leaving for work. Quote, "They timed him. They knew what time he came out to go to work. He came out to crank his truck up and go to work. They were already there and just started shooting." According to the Citizen of East Alabama newspaper, a female witness saw the perpetrators running to their car and could describe their body type and clothing, but couldn't recall any defining facial features. Per WTVM, head investigator Captain Frank Ivey said, quote, "We were able to rule out it being a robbery-type situation or something like that, but we haven't been able to rule out anything else at this point in time." By 2024, Captain Daryl Lassiter told the Citizen of East Alabama that investigators had been looking into two motives: white-collar crime and foul play. He said there was reasonable suspicion of murder for hire, and police have stated that they believe multiple persons of interest were involved. That's something that Eric's loved ones believe too. Eric's family told us that a few years before his death, and through a childhood friend, he'd become involved in an embezzlement scheme. They believe that it may have gone far beyond him, or even the people he directly knew, and that it very well may have been the cause of his death. There are just too many coincidences, they say, to think otherwise. They've considered that those involved in planning or ordering Eric's murder could have been operating at a higher level of the scheme, people Eric himself might never have met. But Eric's family says that they've encountered significant frustrations over the years, difficulties obtaining records, concerns about whether leads were pursued thoroughly, and challenges getting outside investigators access to case materials. They believe that answers exist within the interconnected communities of Phenix City, Columbus, and Atlanta. For 22 years, Eric's family has fought to keep his case in the public eye. Every anniversary, they've made sure that Eric was featured in the local media, sometimes through memorial ads that they've paid for themselves, sometimes by reaching out to journalists for anniversary coverage. They've held vigils that drew community support, and in 2024, they erected billboards. They launched a Change.org petition, and they've spoken on podcasts, trying to reach anyone who might have information. That break, it hasn't come yet, but they have faith that it will, one day. The Phoenix Police Department has gone on record with news outlets to say that Eric's case is open and active. When we reached out to them for comment, we did not hear back. We were introduced to Eric's family through our colleague Haley Gray. Haley has worked extensively with Eric's family, and she shared some of her own interview materials with us, which helped us to paint a fuller picture of who Eric was to his family and friends. And his nephew Vincent, who viewed Eric as a father figure, also agreed to speak with us about his uncle. You'll hear from him throughout the next episodes. He told us that he's trying to take over for his mother as the family spokesperson and let her rest when she can. Eric's story is about more than what happened to him that September morning. His family wants people to remember the kind of man that he was, someone who served his country, who stood up for his family, and stepped in to care for those who needed it. He wasn't defined by his mistakes, they say, but by the love and strength that he gave to those he left behind. And that's why they've been able to fight for so long, even through obstacle after obstacle. It's important to them that people know who Eric was, and not just how he died. He grew up in a big family in Columbus, Georgia, and his sister Kathy was always his best friend. That felt natural because they were only a few years apart. And she told Project Cold Case that, quote, being so close in age, we just kind of did life together. According to his family, Eric loved dancing and music and doing things with his hands. He had a fascination for figuring out how things worked. Cars, electronics, it didn't matter. He wanted to take them apart and put them back together. That curiosity led him to enroll at DeVry University in Atlanta to study computer technology. And when financial constraints made it difficult to continue, he made a different choice. He joined the United States Army. Eric went to basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, and during his service, he excelled. When he took his marksmanship test, he received high commendation from his commanding officers. He was a sharpshooter. His family explained that following basic training, Eric attended the U.S. Army Airborne School, commonly known as Jump School, at Fort Benning, Georgia. Fort Benning borders Columbus, and his family was thrilled to have him close to home during that training. Kathy recalls how proud she was of his achievement. She said that when she went to his graduation, she watched him parachute from a plane. She was elated that Eric had accomplished what he set out to achieve and joined what she described as an elite squad. According to a family member's entry on the Veterans Legacy Memorial, Eric served at multiple duty stations during his military career, including Fort Benning, Georgia, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and an overseas posting in Germany. He, quote, received several awards and medals for his service. Per the Legacy Memorial, he also served during the era of the Persian Gulf War. Eric had one son, Antonio, who'd moved with his mother, Eric's ex-wife, to Kentucky after their relationship ended. But the two remained close throughout Antonio's childhood. Eric still saw Antonio often, making the 6-hour drive on weekends so that they could spend time together. His nephew Vincent told us that Eric later married a woman that he'd met in Georgia, who already had 2 children of her own, and that Eric stepped in to be a father figure to them as well. They settled in Phenix City, not far from Eric's job in Columbus at Kodak. Eric loves sports, both playing them and watching games live. He played baseball as a kid, and he kept that up as well as an adult through his company's softball team. He found himself back out on the field, with his nephews and his stepchildren in the stands watching him play. And as an adult, he loved going to Atlanta to catch Braves and Falcons games. Vincent, who sat down with us for an interview this fall, told us that was exactly the kind of man that his uncle was. Someone who always wanted to be around friends and family. Vincent remembered plenty of gatherings with Eric, in their hometown of Columbus, in Atlanta where Kathy eventually moved, and at Eric's place in Phenix City, where Eric would make any excuse to bring his loved ones together. Those celebrations had been a part of Vincent's life from the time he was little. He actually can't remember a time in his childhood that was not full of Eric's presence.
He was the guy that would always throw parties. So if there was a big fight coming up, he would order the pay-per-view, sometimes rent a giant TV, but it was always a barbecue. He always played music, always had music on, always had music going. He would dance, crack jokes. If he was ever upset or mad about something, he didn't let us see it, especially not the kids. Because I know he got upset. I know he went through things in life like everybody does, but he never wore it. And being so young, I could even compare him to other family members. He just never wore that on his character. It was always a smile. It was always happy to see you, music playing, food. He cooked, barbecued. He was just a real social person. Never had like a negative vibe about him. He was a happy guy.
Those gatherings took on special significance during the holidays. Eric's family explained that Christmas, in particular, brought together relatives from across multiple cities, a rare opportunity for the entire family to be in one place. Vincent talked about what those Christmas celebrations meant for Eric.
That's the time where we all got together because we lived in Atlanta. His kid lived in Kentucky. So it was like the time that everybody congregated. You knew they were going to be there. It wasn't like we were having a party or something where these people might show up and these people might show up. Like Christmas time was where we all gathered at my granny's house, his mother's house, and we ate a bunch of food and we opened presents, watched football, basketball, played music. He wanted to see you. He wanted to give you a hug, talk to you. And Christmas time is just the time to do that. Like we'll drive down to Columbus for Christmas and his truck was right there parked in the grass every time.
Eric felt a responsibility to be the man of the family, to take care of everyone and to make sure that their lives were stable. He treated his partner's children as his own, helping with their sports equipment, rides to practice, or simply showing up when it mattered. He was just as present in his nieces' and nephews' lives. His family recalled that when his sister Kathy was a single parent working night shifts in an emergency room in Columbus, Eric would quietly slip into her home to help her with her new baby, Vincent's younger sister. He would feed her and comfort her, put her back to sleep, all without Kathy having to ask. That was who Eric was. He saw what needed to be done, and he did it.
So anybody that he was romantically involved with, he treated their children as if they were his own. If we're going to a water park or if we're going to the movies, going out to eat, he would just involve all the kids that were close to him in his life. And if somebody needed something for their child, he was always there for them. Like when I played football, me needing equipment, or his ex-girlfriend had two older boys. They played basketball. They played sports. So I know he would help them out with that, practice with them. Even his own child that lived in Kentucky while he lived in Georgia, he would travel frequently just to go see him, not even bring him back, just to go see him, hang out with him.
Vincent said that Eric took the same approach to his wife, who had 2 children when she and Eric married. And, as we said, Eric considered her kids his own.
They were never left out, never treated any different. And he treated me and my sister as if we were his children as well. Even like the first PlayStation I got was from him. So he was always around. He was always dependable. Whether my mom needed help financially or physically, or just a conversation, I always know he was there. Versus my dad not being so prevalent in my life, I looked at him like a father figure, always and forever. If you got in trouble, you would get reprimanded by him verbally, or if he saw you, you go get a spanking. you know, but it was out of love, and you always could depend on him for that. Whether you wanted what he was going to give you at the time or not, he was a father figure through and through. That's how he carried himself. Not to like go into detail about my childhood, but it wasn't the easiest. So having some type of consistency was always helpful. I think that's helpful with any child, whether that's living situation, finances, just being dependable, period. That's why I try to model how I parent, and I have two boys of my own. So he's always been an example of what it's like to be consistent, reliable, dependable. So that was super important to me as a kid, even as an adult. And as a teenager is probably when I missed it the most.
Vincent told us about the time that he and Eric spent together, the small routines that became their own traditions.
So what we like to do is we would ride around in the truck all the time. He had speakers, so it was loud music. He had this special speaker box that I just found fascinating. Everything about his truck was cool to me. Everything about him was cool to me. The way he dressed, the way he walked and talked. But baseball, he loved baseball. He played softball. They had a team at his job. They had a league. He worked for Kodak at the time. And every weekend they played baseball. So every weekend I was at his baseball game watching him play and playing on the field while they warm up or, take a break. That was our thing, baseball. And I would travel with him to Kentucky to go see his son, Tony. So that was like a thing with us. He was like, "You want to ride with me?" I said, "Yeah." And it'll just be me and him. We'll go make a road trip, come back. So it's just those are the things. Riding around in the truck a lot and going to baseball games were probably the best. When Michael Vick played for the Falcons, he took me to like 3 games. And now looking back and seeing the highlights, I'm like, I was at that game with my uncle. So that's probably like the biggest ever are those moments, those Falcons games and those baseball games, Braves games. He was big into sports. I'm big into sports. That was always our thing, sports and cars. We shared that a lot.
They also use those car rides as a chance to talk about anything and everything, something that Vincent misses too.
So we would talk about how school was going, and he would ask me how, things were going with my dad, and if I had a girlfriend, or at the time, I think I played basketball for my church. I just started playing football in high school. I had played youth league before that. So he would ask me about sports and how school was going, my social life and stuff like that.
One thing that everyone in Eric's family remembers is his love of cars, especially his truck. Back in 2003, he was driving a Dodge Ram 1500 with loud mufflers, big tires, and a sound system that you could hear from blocks away. Eric loved that truck. The presence it had, the way that it announced him before he even arrived.
Did you learn a lot about cars from Eric?
I did. I learned a lot about cars from him. I learned a lot about cars from my dad. We're in the South, so older cars were pretty popular at the time, early 2000s. Everybody wanted an older car, older Chevy. My dad raced cars. My uncle always had a bunch of cars with music. And right before he passed, he had just bought like 2 older cars, one that we ended up getting after his passing. So yeah, cars were just a thing for me my whole life, but he had them and my dad had them. So those were like the 2 biggest influences as far as cars. But yeah, he definitely played probably the biggest part because of the music. The music was so big with him, and he played all kind of music, old school music, new school music, R&B and soul music.
As they rode around, Vincent says Eric became a major part of his musical education. He'd play whatever felt like the right soundtrack for the day, and Vincent says those songs became ingrained in his memories of his childhood and his teenage years. He told us about some of his uncle's very favorites, the ones that they'd blast as they watched the asphalt blur through the truck windows.
It would have to be probably the Luke Skywalker era, 2 Live Crew, like all of that Miami music. At the time, they called it booty music. He really liked R&B and soul music. So that's mostly what he listened to. Now, if he's having a party or something, he's listening to the other music, but it was a lot of soul, R&B, just classic Motown, Al Green, all of that stuff.
Do you play those songs for your sons?
I do. I try to play that music just because I remember being in the house and hearing it, or being at the cookout that he's having and hearing it. They might not quite understand it, but I didn't understand it at the time. It just felt good. Live instrumentation and, somebody talking about something of substance. You don't grasp it as a kid, but the music just feels good.
Vincent was 14 in the fall of 2003. And to him, a young teenager living an hour and a half away in Atlanta, Eric's life looked pretty great. His uncle had a house and a stable job, a family, a new truck. He seemed happy. But Vincent said it later became clear that he didn't have the details that would have helped him better understand some of the stresses that Eric was facing. They were just not the kind of things that family would have told the children about. Eric had always been there, financially, emotionally, physically, to help out everyone that he cared about. But he tended to play down his own problems. According to the family, Eric and his wife had separated just a few weeks before his death. She'd taken her children and left, and Eric had the locks changed, and he told his mother that he wanted a divorce. But about a week after they got that news, Kathy was surprised to learn that Eric and his wife had reconciled when Eric called her from Atlanta, and he and his wife were at an R. Kelly concert together. Based on what the family remembers now, he seemed happy at the time, but they weren't told his wife had moved back in at that point. Kathy says that she didn't realize until she arrived in Phenix City on the day of Eric's murder, and she discovered it was his wife that had made the 911 call. Kathy also told us that she was unaware of the pending legal trouble Eric was in, his role in an embezzlement scheme being run by two longtime friends, until just days before his death. It's when Eric himself found out that authorities were involved and that he was going to be questioned. But until then, he hadn't told a soul in the family. Vincent says that he visited his uncle in the weeks before his death, but that he had no idea what Eric was dealing with. He can see some signs looking back, but then he missed them. He was just a kid.
I didn't have a clue. I don't even think my mom did until he called and told her what was going on, just because he didn't let any of us know about what was happening as far as what he was stressed out about or getting in trouble or any of that stuff. It was just smiling and being consistent, just being there while silently dealing with whatever he had going on. I didn't notice a thing.
Vincent was right. His mother, Kathy, and his grandmother, Annie, were aware of stress in Eric's marriage. But they had no idea that he was worried about something with much more serious legal implications, the embezzlement scheme that we mentioned before the break. What Vincent hadn't been told, what his mother, Kathy, had just discovered in late September of 2003, was that Eric Nelams was in trouble. We'll get more into the court proceedings next episode, but the short version is this. Eric had a childhood friend from Columbus, also named Eric T. Cowling, whom the family knew as Dee Dee. Vincent told us that Cowling, who'd moved to Atlanta, had remained close to the Nelms family and would even attend their gatherings. He recalled that Cowling and his wife would stop by his grandmother Annie's home to visit her whenever they were in town. Basically, they all trusted him, and so did his Uncle Eric. Eric's family does not have all the details, but they do know that at some point, Eric Cowling and his wife Stephanie approached Eric Nelams with a proposition. He would pose as a fake vendor, and they'd funnel money to him. According to court testimony from Kathy, Stephanie was creating fake invoices and stealing from her employers. As we said, more on that next episode. Kathy explained that Eric T. Cowling approached Eric Nelams about getting involved in Stephanie's workplace fraud scheme, and Stephanie created fake invoices under the name Erie Nelams, a misspelling of Eric's actual name. And Eric Nelams posed as a fake trucking vendor who never actually provided any services. Over 2.5 years, they stole more than $453,000 from 2 companies. For his part, Eric Nelams opened a post office box in Phenix City, Alabama, and a bank account in Columbus, Georgia, where he deposited the fraudulent checks. Meanwhile, Stephanie and Eric Cowling opened their own bank account in Atlanta in December 2002, where they deposited large and suspicious amounts of cash. Based on what Kathy explained, the embezzlement had been going on for a few years before Eric's death, and when one company, DHL, discovered what was happening, the Cowlings arranged to meet with Eric Nelams. Kathy's understanding is that both her brother and his wife attended the meeting. According to court documents, at that meeting, Stephanie Cowling gave Eric Nelams a script and paperwork and asked him to take the blame. Kathy explained that Eric was resistant to this plan, and he told her that he was worried. Court records show that the meeting with the Cowlings took place on September 23rd. Eric Nelams was killed on September 26th. That means this conversation with Kathy must have happened sometime in those final 3 days of his life. But they don't know what he was doing to prepare for what he must have known was an upcoming meeting with authorities. According to the family, they've thought a lot about why Eric might have gotten involved in the embezzlement scheme. Their theory is that it came down to wanting to provide for his family, to support them in ways that his regular paycheck couldn't. The people who recruited him reportedly live lavishly, but the family says that Eric's lifestyle remained relatively modest. He'd recently bought his Phenix City home and a new truck, but overall, his way of living did not reflect someone with sudden access to large amounts of money. Even though the scheme involved significant amounts of money, the family doesn't think that Eric saw the bulk of it. They don't know what happened to the money or how it was distributed among those involved, but they say that they have reviewed the financial records from the case, and the numbers didn't match how Eric was actually living, and they never got the chance to ask him. There are a few dates that stand out in Eric Nelams' case, and September 23rd is one of them. It's widely reported as the day that the Cowlings met with him to discuss the imminent investigation into the embezzlement, and when, according to Kathy, he said he was unwilling to take the blame for orchestrating the scheme. On Friday, September 26, 2003, Eric got up for work like he usually did. We can't know what he was thinking then, but no doubt the stress of what was coming was weighing on him. But he still woke up early and he got ready for work at Kodak, following the same tight schedule he'd always had. It was one of his military habits. Less than 2 hours away in Atlanta, his sister Kathy and her son and daughter were busy with their morning preparations too. Kathy for work, and her daughter and son getting ready for school. Vincent was a freshman that year, and he said it was a normal day for him. Friends and classes and studying, until he walked outside and he saw his mother's car. That was the first sign that something was wrong.
Yeah, so I was at school. I was in high school at the time. And my mom came and picked me up. She already had my sister in the car, which I thought was strange because I got out of school at 2:10. I was in high school. I think I was a freshman. And I know my sister got out of school at like 4:10. So my sister was already in the car. She said, we got to go to Columbus. I said, why? She was like, I don't know. Nobody tell me anything. They're just telling me I need to get to mama's house. So we were driving and she's like, I'm trying to call my brother, but he's not answering the phone. I remember her saying that a couple of times. Why he not answering the phone? And I remember turning the corner onto East Wind Lane, my granny's house, and his truck not being in the yard, and everybody else's car was there. Everybody else's car was there except for his. And I think in my mind at that point, I already knew something was wrong. And then I remember walking to my granny's house and somebody saying, I don't think she know yet. Like I could just hear somebody saying that in the background. And they told my mom to come into my granny's room, and they told her. And I just remember her breaking down immediately. It just didn't seem real. It was like a bad dream. Because, like I said, he was always there. And there was definitely something going on just from his truck not being there. It was an uneasy feeling. I think she shared that feeling too. She knew something was wrong, but not quite what had happened. And then when they told us that he was shot, it was just shocking. And I remember hearing my mom cry, which is rare because she's such a strong woman that I never really see my mom cry. And I just remember her hollering, crying, and my granny crying. And it just didn't seem real. It didn't seem real.
For Eric's family in Columbus, the morning had been a blur. Desperate calls for help, arriving at a crime scene with police swarming the home. 2 men had been seen fleeing the scene, men the family believes were Eric's killers. Their questions about what happened that morning have never been fully answered. Even though a federal trial examined the embezzlement scheme, Eric's murder remained unsolved. Next time on The Fall Line, we continue Eric Nelams' story, what happened the morning of his murder, and dig into the embezzlement scheme and his unwillingness to take the blame for its design that may have led to Eric's death. If you have information that could help solve Eric's murder, please call Crime Stoppers of Central Alabama using the 24-hour tip line at 334-215-STOP or 7867. There is a $15,000 reward in his case. Eric's family has launched a petition asking the Alabama Attorney General's Cold Case Unit to take the lead on investigating his case. While the Phenix City Police Department maintains the case is active, it remains unsolved with no recent progress, and the family believes fresh eyes and resources could finally bring answers. You can find a link to sign their petition in the show notes and the social media for the podcast. If you know of a case that should be covered on The Fall Line, there's a link to our case submission form in the show notes. Thank you for listening. The Fall Line is an independent podcast, and we appreciate listener support. It allows us to do research, obtain FOIA, pay our content advisors, and support and donate to the causes we care about. Our therapy fund is paid for through Patreon and Apple Premium subscriptions. If you try out the products we advertise, please use our sponsor codes. It really helps. And please take a moment to rate and review our show in your podcast app of choice. If you listen on Apple Podcast, please be sure to check your subscription to make sure you're set for automatic downloads so you don't miss an episode. My book, Lay Them to Rest, is out everywhere now, so you can find out more through the link in our show notes. The Fall Line is written, hosted, and researched by Laura Norton. Additional research by Haley Gray. Interviews by Brooke Hargrove. Engineered and scored by Southern Gothic Media and Rachel Boyd. Content advisement by Vic Kennedy and Brandy C. Williams. Special thanks to Liz Lipka and Haley Gray.